Welcome back to the Real Screeners. My name is Beto, and this is my co-host Lenny, and we are here to give you our countdown of 10 films, sci-fi or fantasy, that we feel should have been nominated for a Best Picture nomination at the Oscars. This is our chance to talk about the Academy Awards because the Oscars are coming up for 2021.
1 week away.
We have to get this in before the Oscar buzz and Oscar craziness is over. And here we are to talk about a genre that doesn't get recognized often enough. And what we did was we actually sat down, looked at every decade, starting from the 1980s, which is around the time, of course, we started watching movies and appreciating movies.
That's around the time we were born, and so we figured, well, we can't go too far back because then this list will get super long. This video will be...
And we had to make sure that we had both seen these movies, of course. So we went decade by decade and we selected 10 films that we feel good about. And of course, we're sci-fi and fantasy fans, so this was fun to make as well because of that reason, It
was a nice trip down memory lane for sure.
Absolutely.
And we would like to remind you guys, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and TikTok at Real Screeners, Instagram, real.screeners. And if you're into podcasts, you can find us there too as well on your favorite platform. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and several others.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit that like, notifications button, share the Real Screeners with the world. We love talking about movies. And also don't forget to check out our merch, from movie themes to music themes, wine themes. We have an eclectic array of different lifestyle themes at realscreeners.com, so don't forget to check that out. And without further ado, here we go.
Let's get into it.
Drum roll.
Boom! Our first entry is 1982's Blade Runner. And before we get into that, guys, just want to let you know that this is in chronological order from the 80s, so keep that in mind. Not a top 10, okay?
Yes, Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott's 1982 Blade Runner, one of the best sci-fi noirs you will ever see, right, Beto?
Yes. Talk about a movie that set the tone and inspiration for a lot of future sci-fi movies to come as far as its setting. Mm-hmm. This was a movie that was memorable in its portrayal of like a seedy, dark, moody atmosphere.
All those
cities that
aspects.
Are overpopulated, and those giant, TV screens. Such a memorable visual spectacle to look at.
Right. When I think of the movie, I think of those visuals pop in my head immediately.
Yeah.
And the next visual is Rutger Hauer, throwing around Harrison Ford like a ragdoll.
Or Daryl Hannah making like crazy,
backflips
and stuff. Yeah. But, at the center of this movie is a really good human story, obviously about prejudice and about the mistreatment of, a group of people that are different. And I'm talking, of course, about the whole idea of the replicants.
Right.
And the fact that one of the things that I remember the most about this movie is his relationship with this replicant girl, Rachel, and she is played by Sean Young. I really like the dynamic between Harrison Ford and that Rachel character. I thought it was really well done.
Right. It really touches on humanity, right? Like you said, it's, you kind of go beyond just looking at them as robots, because in some aspects, they might be a little more human than actual humans, right? So it begs the question, like, what does it mean to be human? What is humanity?
Right.
Who deserves to live? That type of thing, because they were on a short lifespan, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the noir qualities that we mentioned before, the darkness, the kind of detective vibe to it, and a movie that I think was ahead of its time. And even though it was received with a little bit of controversy, I think that it is a solid sci-fi film.
Yeah, that's an excellent entry for sure. So way to start off our list, guys. An iconic sci-fi hit, Blade Runner.
Yes.
Next up, we have in 1985. I'm going to give you guys 3 seconds to try to guess.
Here we go.
3. Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis. So many good things to this movie. Honestly, it's amazing performances all around. I mean, you don't think of that in Oscars, because when you think of Oscars, you think of a lot of drama, right?
Yeah.
And this movie had a lot of funny moments and a lot of funny dialogue. But it was good acting. It was convincing acting, and it was entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, comedies are another genre that often get overlooked, I think, by the Oscars. The Oscars tend to go for some serious, fare, but this is
sometimes boring.
Yeah, sometimes boring too, but this is a perfect blend of comedy, action, adventure. At its core, you have Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd perfect, chemistry. And then you have this crazy idea of, what it would be like to go back in time and get to experience your parents as teenagers.
In high school, that's exactly what I wrote. Look at that, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's weird. That's funny.
It's such an ingenious idea,
Yeah, I thought it was cool how I was on the edge of my seat virtually the entire movie, man. I mean, and then the little ding, I can't even do it right, but
the soundtrack, the musical score, a very memorable,
very well placed, yeah,
a very memorable musical score and a cool soundtrack to boot. It's such a feel good movie and a movie that you can revisit again and again, and such a staple and such a classic.
This film's quotes are still said 35 plus years later. So
Robert Zemeckis,
if you haven't watched Back to the Future, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it.
All right, so number 3 on our list is 1993.
Yes, I was listening to that today, believe it or not.
Yeah, so Steven Spielberg made 2 movies that year. Schindler's List, which of course won the Oscar for Best Picture, but Jurassic Park,
that's right,
deserved a nomination.
Come on.
Easily. Come on.
I know that there was a period of time where they weren't letting directors earn multiple nods for the Oscars. I don't know if this fell into that time frame, but man, this should have gotten deserved accolades, because my goodness, how is this not nominated? I mean, it's a movie that made you believe for 2 hours that dinosaurs had actually come back to life.
Dude, this was like a religious experience in the theater, man. To see those actors' faces when they first saw the dinosaurs, and watching the audience just like their jaws drop, because dinosaurs have never looked so real on screen before,
My jaw dropped when I was watching the trailer and I saw the T-Rex's
How much did it drop?
Footprint. It was like, and I was like, I'm going to be the first to see this. And I actually wasn't, because I actually had to watch this on the stairs of the theater. That's how packed it was.
What's memorable for me, I guess, is the way that it builds suspense.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's not thrown in your face, but it's built so slowly and efficiently. There are some key moments that are just slowly built up, especially with the kid being in the car scene, and they use a lot of scenes to create suspense with those kid actors, and a cool dilemma, man, about whether, of course, that whole dilemma about whether it's ethical to do this in the first place.
Right. It hits so many of these different areas that make a movie Oscar worthy, including special effects, animatronics, something that had never been done before. Like I said, it made me feel like dinosaurs were real. It's like, my goodness, that T-Rex was amazing. I'll take that over CGI any day.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see how much effects have improved since then, right? But it was the first of its kind. So, and then of course, John Williams doesn't disappoint.
Of course,
with that score.
He's perfect. He's practically perfect. Talking about groundbreaking techniques, let's move on to our number 4 selection, guys. It is 1999's The Matrix. Woo, man, one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time, man. Not so much because of Keanu Reeves' performance, but I mean, he is good with the fighting,
I thought he was tailor made for that role. He had kind of like that cyberpunk,
kind of mysterious.
Again, persona, another movie that plays on noir, definitely for sure.
For sure. With all the techniques that are associated with that,
and then of course the revolutionary bullet time, right? Bullet time.
Yeah, it's bullet time. It hadn't really been done to this level, or even done at all,
right?
In 1999, and they won some Oscars, and I did write them down because I'm not going to remember this, but the movie did win some Oscars for Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Mixing, Best Film Editing, and Best Audio Editing. But I mean, this was such a novel idea, and it had some great themes attached to it. People always talk about, the action and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, you do have to think about the themes of free will versus control, which they explore in depth in the sequels, which weren't as good as this one, but it's another conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Also, themes of humanity, religion, as far as looking at Neo as the Messiah figure,
the Redeemer,
on and on. There's so many good things.
And you have the Judas character as well, with the betrayal that happens in the movie.
Right.
There are so many religious, connotations to it. A lot of good philosophical, undertones to it as well.
I think that if they had made this movie a little longer and maybe went more in depth in those themes, it probably would have gotten a nod for Best Picture.
Yeah. Number 5
Yep.
is another Steven Spielberg film. It was released in 2002, and we're talking about Minority Report.
With Tom Cruise, a younger Colin Farrell.
Max von Sydow.
Great actors in there.
Yes, good actors. Another noir sci-fi film. You know, it has again
Super noir.
It centers around murder. It centers around the a cop or a detective. The pacing is so perfect, and the layers that keep adding on to the story. It takes you in directions that are not expected.
One thing that I remember from this was all the different themes, especially when I look at the precogs, I think of the theme of slavery, you know, and using people for your ends, and is it justified, and all that type of thing, all that type of stuff.
Really good stuff in there, yeah.
And then, of course, there's greed, power, and then you have the main character, John Anderton, and his coping. Well, you know, what does it mean to cope? And going through someone's pain and what they do. I mean, can you really judge them for that, you know, and all the different motivations he has for what he does? And to me, it was a pretty good character study. I was telling you when we watched it recently how I liked how they really went into his character and unfolded it in a way that it was shown to us and not told.
At the center of all of this is the idea of predestination and free will. There's so much good stuff to unpack there, and some really believable, quirky characters that are very memorable in my mind. And they made the future look really cool, and it had like a distinct style to it, kind of like this grayish, bluish hue to it. Really good, solid movie that can easily stand up to any Oscar contender.
Yeah,
so.
If you guys haven't seen Minority Report, definitely check it out. Now, our number 6 entry was from back in 2005. It's a movie that Beto considers the greatest comic book movie ever made, and I disagree, but I understand where he's coming from.
It is the greatest comic book movie ever made.
It is Christian Bale and Batman Begins, and I will definitely agree with you that this is as deep a character study for a comic book movie that you will ever see.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan, man. I mean, he took the glossy Tim Burton Batman movies and he gave them character depth and complexity, grit, and you know, talk about a dark, brooding Batman, and a movie that takes different perspectives on what it means to purge the world from evil and the means or the methods that one can go about, you know, to do that, and an exploration on violence and a great coming of age or origin story for Batman in my mind as well. And you have a great supporting cast in there with Liam Neeson and Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman and Gary Oldman, and forget about it. And you know, like, come on. And a really cool concept and a really cool ending with some really cool special effects. I know I'm saying cool a lot, but
it was cool. It was cool.
Super
the fighting
cool.
sequences were top notch, and the action was fantastic.
Just a great layered comic book movie that doesn't feel necessarily like a comic book movie, but its own character study movie.
And I have nothing to add to that because I mean everything he said was perfect. So there you go. Batman Begins.
Batman Begins. I'm very passionate about the Dark Knight trilogy, man.
Yeah, which is why our number 7 entry is another Christian Bale movie. It is 2008's The Dark Knight. And of course, when you think about that movie, you don't necessarily think about Christian Bale. You think of Heath Ledger's transformative performance, his iconic take on the Joker.
Yes, man, and I cannot believe that this movie did not get nominated for Best Picture.
I can't believe it.
I think I saw that movie in the theater at least 3 or 4 times because it's a movie that hooks you with its tension and its nail-biting music, and then of course the Ledger performance is like what anchors everything together. And you know, I was thinking earlier about what makes this movie great, and it's the way in which the Joker character kind of creates these scenarios that put Batman and his buddies in these crazy ethical dilemma moments.
Situations for sure.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, and speaking of Ledger's performance, right? You know, a lot of times people jump into that Joker role and they want to be a little over the top, but this was subtle and it was highly nuanced and it was totally believable. And like you said, you know, his character was kind of the gateway into like the themes of this movie, right? You're talking about the duality of law, like what is legal, what is justice, what is moral justice, you know, is the law enough to attain justice? And then in talking about Harvey Dent, Two-Face, you're talking about what's more important, the truth or the myth, the facade? I mean, we can go on and on, but again, a very well-rounded movie packed with a lot of goodness in it.
Our next movie at number 8 is 2014's James Gunn's
Soon-to-be classic.
Steven Spielberg's, one of Steven Spielberg's favorite movies of all time.
It's not Jaws.
Is going around on the internet, which is surprising to me. And it's, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy. When you think of the MCU, this movie, for me, has the best camaraderie of characters. They're so much fun, and each one has their own distinct personalities. And this is, once again, a perfect combination for me of like heart, and it's charming, and it's funny, and the music and the soundtrack, and I can just go on and on. But what do you think about Guardians?
Well, I will say that, including this on our list was not a home run for me. I mean, I wasn't like, oh yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, that's an Oscar-worthy movie. No,
but the fact that Steven Spielberg likes it so much gave me
got me there.
Gave me ethos.
So let's throw that in there. Yeah, I mean, it's Steven Spielberg's number 4 movie of all time. Wow, impressive. But so it obviously might not strike you as Oscar-worthy, but everyone knows this movie. Everyone loves this movie, and it was an obscure comic book property that the MCU thrust into movie theaters and made it a hit. And James Gunn, he's a genius. What they did very well with this was, I think they hit on so many different audience demographics, and
yes.
what really drove that was the soundtrack,
the music. Yeah.
I mean, you're getting a lot of songs from the 60s and 70s, and so you're getting like young viewers, older viewers.
You're hooking in a lot of different age groups. Yeah,
comic book lovers, sci-fi lovers, music fans, romance fans. I mean, like you said, this is very widely appealing, and so
wildly irreverent, and I love it for it, and it's my favorite MCU movie, you know that. So, all right. So then our next movie, also in 2014, is another Christopher Nolan movie. I'm realizing we have a lot of Nolan films on here.
For a reason.
So
he also directed Inception, by the way, which was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, so we didn't have it on this list, of course, but we're talking about Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway and Michael Caine. What struck me about this movie is that I feel like it's a very serious character study and a movie really about family disguised as a science fiction movie, in my mind.
That's exactly how I saw it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a heartbreaking movie. It's a tender film about a man that has this calling and this mission and is kind of forced to stay away from his family. But then at the end of the movie, he finds, of course, that what's most important is family.
Right.
And
you talk about a movie that really portrays love and love for your family transcending time and space. Literally, this did transcend time and space.
Yeah.
So, it was a very clever idea. Clever way they went about doing it. Now, to be honest, I kind of called BS on a couple things in this movie, but overall, this was a good movie. Like, I'm not going to lie.
It was overlong, and a couple of scenes.
I'm talking about plot points. I was like, I don't know about that, but
yeah.
No, this is definitely worth the watch for sure.
But it got me. It got me. I felt the intensity of the whole family, themes in there. And of course, it's a great survival story as well.
And so for our final entry, it's a 2017 movie that was utterly depressing, guys, but it was really good. I mean, sometimes the best movies are the ones that make you feel something. And man, I teared up at the end of this movie.
It definitely broke a formula, though, for sure.
Yeah. And
you gotta love it for that.
So I'm going to let you guys know that this is a movie starring Hugh Jackman. It was about the death of Wolverine. Enough said. I think we're done. Okay, let's go.
That's it. Enough said.
Yeah.
Death of Wolverine.
How do you mix that?
What else do you need to know?
Not get an Oscar nomination. Come on.
Logan.
This was a great movie because this was a movie where it was kind of a slow burn at times, but it needed to be that way because this is an actor who had amazingly portrayed this guy for 17 years.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to go through those slow moments of feeling his pain, his burden, his burnout.
This is his best best Wolverine performance for sure. I mean, I think that he did a masterful job in this movie. This is a movie that broke the standard, formulaic superhero formula, and it presented kind of like what felt like almost like a post-apocalyptic environment, even though it wasn't exactly that, but it was sort of like it had Western influences in there.
Right, like Shane.
Yeah, and then Shane, of course, because he's protecting the girl.
Movie, yeah.
But a road movie for sure, and a movie that once again unpacks really good themes, right? Perseverance. It also kind of like explores different perspectives on violence as well. And the fighting choreography in this movie feels like real, like there's an authenticity to it. It doesn't feel forced.
Well, Hugh Jackman's an amazing actor, and he knows what it is to play Wolverine.
Yes.
And so I really liked how this movie, again, unfolded slowly. It took its time. It made you feel the gravity of the situation, and you just felt this loss coming, and besides just the movie being about him, you have it exploring another side of him, which is kind of like the paternal side, right? Because he, in a sense, was, like you said, protecting this girl, which was kind of like cloned from his blood, in a sense, like his daughter in a way, right? In Laura X-23, which they explore very well in the comic books and the Old Man Logan story arc there. So definitely a lot of layers to this movie, and it made me cry.
Yeah, no, it was very emotional movie for sure. Again, wasn't good enough to make the best picture cut.
Man.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if there was ever a sci-fi or fantasy movie where the Oscars were like, hey, maybe we should find the one that's really dramatic. How about this one? Come on,
about
throw
this
it a bone.
One? Yeah. So that is our list, right?
Yeah, and I'm sad because this was so much fun, and I wanted to go 10 more movies, but no. This would be like an hour long.
Yeah, I do quickly want to mention that 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah.
Was nominated during the 1968 awards, but not for Best Picture. It didn't quite make that cut, but I think Stanley Kubrick received a nomination for director. But that's another sci-fi movie that I think is definitely worth recognizing.
And then I want to throw in, I know some of you are going to be like, well, what about Terminator, And so, yeah, I totally see that. Terminator, T2 could have been on this list, but But again, to me, I see
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, maybe.
Right, more as action movie. Maybe maybe Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, maybe. Arguably, but this is what we got.
We want to know what you guys think about our list. Is there anything that we left out? Is there anything on our list that you would have said, that's crazy, that movie does not deserve a nomination for Best Picture?
Or do you think we're geniuses? And you're like, yes, I totally agree that The Matrix should have been considered.
It's all subjective, guys.
Yeah, definitely leave a comment below, guys. And of course, if you like this video, we have plenty more on our channel. Definitely give those a view, and of course, subscribe, like, and share if you like our content.
Yes, and don't forget, of course, social media. We're available on TikTok and Facebook at Real Screeners, Instagram, real.screeners. And don't forget to tune in next time for our audience reaction and real take on Mortal Kombat! Test your might.